Hello everybody, Cone Dodger here. Welcome back to Automation. Today we're continuing on our American Engine Recreation mini-series with an oddball episode. I've had quite a few requests for some motors that are out of the norm. Obviously we started off with some pretty popular Chevy motors. We went through the Chevy small blocks and big blocks. Today we're going to do some different manufacturers. We're going to start out with something I have not built, and that is a non-performance, how do I word this? It's a, alright, well heck, this is how you're gonna word it. It's a Jeep motor. The AMC 4.0 liter straight 6. So let's go ahead and start that. New engine, inline 6. So this is, I'm trying to figure out how to describe it. I guess it's the first motor built solely for the purpose of being durable and being low-end power heavy. So I guess that's how I will describe it. There's a cast iron block, as you may expect. The bore is 98.9. Don't have that update yet, so the block scaling is still a little bit weird. There we go, 98.9 and 86.7 on the stroke. That to me is pretty surprising. I expected this to be a long stroke motor, and it is not. So there's the first surprise in this build. Not surprising is that the bottom end is going to be normal cast everything. Nothing fancy here. Everything's just durable cast parts that are meant to last. So that's what we have there. On the top end we have a push rod setup, so no options to choose there. Just a 2 valve per cylinder setup, again with a cast iron head, and then the compression ratio is 8.8. So that's getting near the low part of the meter here, and that is part of what makes this motor so long lasting. You know, it doesn't have super high compression, so it doesn't cause a lot of wear on the head gasket or the top end, or, you know, there's just very little wear to do with this engine. I see something that I missed. The years, the ones that this motor was around forever. It carried on well into the 90s. Started in the, depending on which, if you want to talk about the 4.0, it started in the 80s, but we're going to I'm choosing the 91 to 95 motor. Oops, too far. So I'm going to go with 95. I chose that motor to get my specs from, so that's what we'll go with. They're all pretty similar though. The cam profile, I assume, is actually going to be lower than the default settings. We're going to go with 30. OVVT or VVL. The valve cover looks pretty similar to that. It's usually pretty simple. Let's see, should we go with bare aluminum or black? Is there a black without fins? No. And we'll go with that one there. That looks pretty good. NA, obviously. Fuel system, it is injected, but it is a single point injection motor. That's something we haven't done a whole lot with. Standard intake and just regular unleaded fuel. We'll go up to a 13.3, maybe a 13.2. We'll see how that goes. Ignition timing I'm going to leave as is for now. RPM limit, again with that whole long-lasting motif, 5,300 RPM rev limit. So that's why the bottom end can be so simple. It doesn't have to spin real fast, and it doesn't have a lot of compression. So there you have it. The header is going to be short cast, possibly even a cast log. It's kind of difficult to say. I'm thinking short cast is more likely. Piping, let's see, we will need 2 1/4 should be fine. We'll put a 3-way cat on this one, and Jeeps are not, like stock 4.0 Jeeps, not known to be loud, so we'll go with a reverse flow, and then a straight through. So let's see, anything else I'm forgetting? Not really. Alright, so let's start this up. We are looking for 190 horsepower at 4750 and 225 foot-pounds at 4,000. So that's why I'll probably have to tune with the cam and the ignition timing a little bit. Let's see where we are. Looks like we are high on the torque. Low, or we're not high on the torque, but we're peaking too early on the torque. And low on the horsepower, so... compression is what the issue was, or not compression, but the engine is knocking, so that's why we were so low on power. 87.7, what did I pick, like low quality? No? I guess I will just... I mean, I'm sure some of that is because of this cam profile. So let me go up to a 35 and let's see. Yeah, the chart looks a little better, so maybe that fixes it. Still peaking rather early on torque, but it's pretty flat. Not nearly enough power. Engine is still knocking, so 87.4. Let me come off of the ignition timing some. There we go. Now we jump that chart up. 233. That's a little bit more torque than we need. 185. Not quite enough horsepower, so I can go up on that cam profile here. Watch it be 40, right where it should be, default setting. Apparently the AMC 4.0 is the default motor of all motors. 232, so, but it came on later. You can see that's definitely an improvement to get it closer to reality. It looks like I could go up even a touch more. Let's not go too far though, because I'm trying to get that torque a little later and a little bit more horsepower, so that's why a little bit more aggressive cam profile will get you there. Brought it back up to 3,000 and very flat 192, so that's plenty of horsepower. But overall the power is coming on a little late. The torque is, I'm okay with the torque because it's very flat. Up to 4,000, it's still making over 220 foot-pounds, so that's very good. Let's see, without even touching the quality, we have 66,000 kilometers of MTBF. The cost should be very low, yeah, 762 with 22 man-hours. What I'm going to do is actually up the quality on the bottom end and the top end. Because like I said, they built these motors to last. These were meant to survive 300,000 miles, and they often did. So that's why I feel we can afford that. Fuel system, I'm not going to bump up because Chrysler made it. And yeah, that pretty much answers that. Their fuel systems, especially in this era, were very poor. I have worked on some Cherokees with this motor. This ignition and fuel injection setup is a nightmare to work with. They often have idle issues and stuff like that, so not messing with that. I guess we can just quick test here and see. Not a huge jump in MTBF, but good enough. Good enough. Alright, so that was a pretty quick and easy one. I'm going to call this the AMC 4.0. Oops, later. Trunk. So maybe when we get truck bodies in the future, we'll have a basis on what to do with our truck motors. Okay, moving on and getting even weirder. Why should I just make the muscle car, sports car, super engines of the eras of American engines? Let's make some iconic motors that weren't necessarily known as the best motors around. So what I'm going to make now is a 4-cylinder. Yep, the 4-cylinder. And it is the Iron Duke. This motor was found in a lot of things. It was also called the Pontiac 2.5 or the 151 because it's 151 cubic inches. You could find it in a list of dozens of vehicles, but here's a couple to give you an idea. The Monza, for 2 years, it was available in the Camaro and the Firebird to compete with that 4-cylinder Mustang of the era in the 80s. It was found in the Fiero, and it was also made its way into the CJ Jeep for a couple years, and just tons of other vehicles. Pretty much anything that needed a budget motor, this is what they put it in. Alright, so where do we begin? I'm going to go year 85, which is about mid-cycle for this motor. I have a cast iron block. The bore is a 101.6. And the stroke is a 76.2. I'm not sure if it's going to let me go that far. Will it? It will. So, yeah, very, very offset bore and stroke here. So you got basically a huge bored motor. And it was rumored, I read this, but I'm not sure, that this is really just half of a Pontiac V8. Like they just kind of split the casting in half and made this motor. I'm not sure if that's true. I hear that about motors all the time, and I really don't know if it's true or not. I'm gonna hope it's not. The crank, everything's gonna be cast. Alright, top end is push rod. One thing that's interesting about these motors, I have a little bit of knowledge on these. I had a friend of mine who had a Fiero, and he told me about it, and I ended up doing a little bit of research on it. One of the things that was a real killer for these is that the camshaft, which would be here, is not driven by a belt, it's driven by a plastic gear inside the timing cover. So the plastic gear rides on the gear of the crank, and that's how the camshaft gets its movement. And as you might expect, plastic timing gear is quite prone to failure. But luckily this is a non-interference motor, so they would survive it, but very common for them to have that issue. Let's go down on the compression, 8.2. And by the way, if you don't know what non-interference versus interference means, this would be a good time to explain that. You see this motor? See how the valves, now let's say that cylinder number 1 here is at top dead center. So this is as far as that piston will go up. The valves here are clearancing the piston. So what that means is if the camshaft should be able to free spin, if say your gear broke or your belt broke, these valves would be floating around and going haywire, and the piston would still be going up and down because everything on the bottom end is still connected. In a non-interference motor, this piston won't contact these valves. In an interference motor, if for whatever reason the camshaft gets out of sync, out of time, the valves will hit the pistons. So on vehicles that are interference, it's very important to keep the timing belt maintained, or else if you lose that belt, you do a lot more damage than you expected to do. So that's the lesson. I wonder if I could visualize that. Let's see if we get rid of the motor. And let's say we crank up the compression here. Okay, so you see now say this is a little exaggerated. You see with these dome top pistons, it is now an interference motor. So if for whatever reason these valves are open and that piston comes up, they're gonna make contact and it's not gonna be pretty. So that's your lesson for the day. Let's go back down to 8.2 on the compression. Again, very low. Cam profile, let's leave it at 40 this time. That seemed to work for us last time there. Let's bring the motor back in. Definitely not that modern looking valve cover. Let's go for, yeah, plain stamped steel, no design, nothing. That looks right. Naturally aspirated. There was no any forced induction on this motor that I know about. Probably not even aftermarket, although somebody out there has probably done it. I've never heard of it being done. The fuel system is injection. Looks like we're going to bump up a year or 2 or 3 to get single point EFI. It was called the Vortec, not to be confused with Vortec. They're modern motors. Vortec, but that was a throttle body injection, single injector on the throttle body, and that was considered pretty darn high tech for the era of this motor. And I think that's the only bragging rights they really had about it, to be honest. So that's that. Regular unleaded is what we will go with. It's possible this motor dates back far enough. I'm gonna say that it dates back to far enough that it was always regular unleaded. I don't believe there was ever a leaded version of this motor. Fuel mix, we'll go with the 13.2. Timing, I'm having a feeling I'll probably back that off to 45. Red line, 5,000 RPM. This is what really hurts that motor. 5,000 RPM is barely going. So for a 2.5 liter motor, this thing is only pushing 95 horsepower and 130 foot-pounds of torque. Yikes. So we only need a very small pipe. We'll go inch and 3/4 just to be nice to it. I'm gonna put a 3-way cat on it. It's possible it had a 2-way cat, but I want to give this thing every chance it's got. It was offered in the Fiero up until pretty far into its production cycle, so let me look that up real quick. Yes, the 2.5 151 was offered up until 88 in the Fiero, and in 88, here we have the 3-way cat was available, so we will use it. I'm just going to do a reverse flow muffler on it. I don't think it's going to need that much muffling. So let's see if we can get our numbers here. 95 horsepower and 130 foot-pounds. I didn't get the RPMs that should happen at, but well, I don't think it's gonna matter. So let's start it. Ooh, listen to that thing purr. It's too much power. It's way too much power. So what that means is we can make this thing even cheaper. Let's see, what can we do? Take some timing out of it. What was our torque at? We were looking for 130. We made more than that, right? 138. So yeah, we made more than that. So let's just take some timing out. Let's see. 104, 134. Getting close. 103, 130. So what would that mean? That would mean I need a less aggressive cam profile. Let's try that. Go 35. 99, 129. So let me go even further on that. Let's see how that does with our octane. We're already at 84. We're still at 84. Not really getting that horsepower down far enough, am I? 96, 127, that's pretty close. Let's just get that torque up to 130. 129. 130. Okay. There we have it. So now we have a super butt. This has to be the cheapest motor I've ever built. 16 man hours, $608. Really, really super cheap. But you never know, that might come in handy in the future. So I'm going to call this the Iron Duke 2.5 Pontiac. even though it's Pontiac motor, they put it in all GM vehicles pretty much, and it's even some AMC vehicles. So I think it was found in the AMC Eagle as well. Yeah, so very widely used motor, probably because of this, that cheapness. Alrighty. So a little bit short of an episode today. Just wanted to do some oddballs. Before I move on, the next 2 episodes we're going to be focusing on Ford V8s. We obviously went through the small block Chevy and the big block Chevy, but now we've got to go through some Ford motors. Definitely going to go through the 351, the 302, work our way up through the modular V8s, and now Ford's doing some really cool things with their V8 technology, like the Coyote motor, the modern module motor. It's very cool things, and I'm pretty excited to build some of those. Unlike Chevy, who pretty much only made that ZR1 motor that was super crazy high tech, Ford has always been a little bit more cutting edge with their V8 technology, so I'm looking forward to that. But until then, my name is Cone Dodger, and thanks for watching.